Hello and welcome to episode 176 of Magic Rays of Light, a podcast exploring the world of Apple TV and so much more. I'm your host, Devon Dundee. I'm joined by Sigmund Judge. Sigmund, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. It's good to be back. Apologies for the week that was missed. Occasionally that does happen. Sometimes health gets in the way, and despite us planning the whole episode last week, we weren't able to fit it into our schedules. But we're here, and, I've been thinking about this, and I don't know how you feel about it, Devon, but especially when it comes to Apple TV and tvOS, beta season has been quite quiet. There's not been anything particularly that I'm overly excited about. There's probably more pains that I'm, kind of holding everything to myself for the time being. Because I don't know, I never thought I'd be someone that wasn't into change as much as I am with this update. But that's going to come later. And I think because there's been very little for me to get excited about and try out, instead I've been looking at upgrades to the home theatre. Me and my friend Gareth are going to be painting the ceiling black this weekend to get rid of any lasting reflections. I've also ordered something that I think could work, not just in my home theatre, but in every living room.
Ooh, I'm intrigued, Sigmund. I don't have any idea. You didn't give me any preview into what this was. You just said I'd be into it. So I'm excited to find out what you've got for us this week.
Okay, well, today we're going to talk about tactile feedback when watching films and TV shows. I know you've got HomePods, and depending on your home decor and home entertainment stands, etc., you may get a little bit of feedback from the low end of the speaker. But I've always been a fan of subwoofers. I think we talked earlier this year that I bought 2 subwoofers. When I'm allowed to play films and TV shows super, super loud, I get that tactile feedback, that great low end. And in fact, before I had the whole home theatre route, I used to use HomePods, and I used to pair them with a subwoofer. I don't know how many people have tried this that are listening, but I had a small subwoofer which I'd use in conjunction with my HomePods by using the Airport Express and AirPlay 2. And well, that Airport Express has long since been retired until now. I think you must have experienced it yourself when watching a film in the theatre recently. You feel that punch or that crash through your chair, mainly because the volume is so high that the room is being pressurized in order to be able to feel that tactile response and pull us really into the movie, right? Would you agree?
Oh, for sure. I love that feeling. It's one of the best parts about going to the theater is when you get a really good boom and it kind of feels like the room shaking for a moment. It used to be kind of jarring, but now you expect it as part of the theatrical experience. And I love that. I love that aspect of it.
So when I'm playing my films and TV shows loud, and I've got my subwoofers set to around 20 hertz, I can feel that for the most part. But I can only do it when I'm playing loud. And especially with how hot it's been in London, I have the windows open. I don't want to annoy neighbours. So I wanted to figure out a way in which I could get that feedback and get it without basically turning everything up to ridiculous volume levels. And so I was doing a little bit of research online, and I looked around eBay to see if maybe someone gave this a shot and then decided not to go with it. But I've been looking at tactile transducers for your seats, a little bit like what we've experienced or what you can experience in 4DX, but without all of the motion rocking and all of that, right? And I'm really looking at this as more of a complement to subwoofers as opposed to replacing them and having everything shake and become a roller coaster ride. That's not what I'm going for. And you can do that. I have these transducers which are basically like subwoofer motors without the subwoofer. and they can be attached to the inside of a seat or underneath a seat. And you can set the certain levels and everything. And it just adds extra tactile response, which is great when you're watching late night and you don't want to disturb people. Maybe even if you've got kids. We talked about AirPods the other week with regard to, sharing audio. This, I feel like it could be something that you don't even know you're missing. And it could change how you, personally, Devon, how you experience films and TV shows at home, knowing that you get the positive response from the tactile feedback when you go into a regular cinema.
I would have never even imagined that this is something that the tech would be available for at home, but it actually does make a lot of sense. And yeah, I can't wait to hear your experience with this, because this does sound really exciting and like something that would be an awesome reinforcement for the bass end, even of my HomePods. I think it could work out well. So you mentioned the airport. Is that how you're getting the signal to the tactile motors there?
So I'm not, like with my AV receiver, I'm able to split the subwoofer channel and then have that go to a separate receiver that just deals with the tactile response. And so I'm able to do it that way, at which point you can really kind of make adjustments in terms of you can have a music mode or you can have a film and TV mode on these things. But you could do the same by just attaching that split audio out to a airport express and then finding some way to send that AirPlay signal to the transducers, and that would work. So you could almost have like a wireless battery powered thing rather than having cables strewn everywhere. Yeah, I can see, I'm convincing you more and more. You're nodding and I can see your eyes lighting up. So this is, as I say, it's bizarre because no one really talks about it, but I think people, when they go to the cinema, they think, oh, it's the volume that's loud, that's why I love it. But actually it's really, the low end and how that's been tuned in the cinema that gives you that cinema feel. And well, I've now got it at home.
That's amazing. Yeah, I should have guessed, based on how much we've been talking about 4DX and the tactile side of things, that you would be looking into this sort of area. So very much a surprise to me, but makes so much sense. And I'm very jealous now. I'm going to have to look into this as well. I think you found the next step for a lot of home theaters in terms of replicating the theatrical experience and making it all it can be.
Yeah, but not just home theaters, living rooms.
Yes.
I genuinely think that this is something that actually, if you don't want a subwoofer even, or you can't get that past the approval process from your spouse or whatever, this is a way of getting around that. And it can be turned off, it can be turned on, it can be turned high, it can be turned down low, right? And you could set it all with automations as well. So yeah, I'm really into it. I'm not giving any specifics just yet, because what I don't want to do is tell everyone, hey, I had a really good experience with this particular tactile feedback system. I want to try this out a little bit because it is a used system. And then if it works for me, then I'll give a little bit more information. Yeah, for now, that's it. Tactile feedback.
I love it. Well, thanks for starting our episode this week out with the boom, Sigmund. Appreciate that. But of course, we've got a ton of other stuff to talk about this week as well. We're going to share our favorite shows and films of 2025 so far and what's to come in the second half of the year. We're going to recap the galaxy-trotting antics of Murderbot, but we're going to start with our highlight on the return of Apple Original Sci-Fi series Foundation.
152 years after the events of Season 2, the Foundation has become increasingly established far beyond its humble beginnings, while the Cleonic dynasty's empire has dwindled. As both of these galactic powers forge an uneasy alliance, a threat to the entire galaxy appears in the fearsome form of a warlord known as the Mule, whose sights are set on ruling the universe by use of physical and military force as well as mind control. It's anyone's guess who will win, who will lose, who will live, and who will die, as Hari Seldon, Gal Dornick, the Cleons, and Demoiselle play a potentially deadly game of intergalactic chess.
Centuries ago, the Foundation was created to save humanity. But the coming darkness was always the turning point.
The Mule is here. We need to act together.
Everything is going to end. She's the only one who can stop it.
Tell me, was this part of your plan?
Foundation Season 3 comes to us from David S. Goyers, based on the book series by Isaac Asimov, and stars Jared Harris, Lee Pace, Lula Bell, Laura Byrne, Cassian Bilton, Terrence Mann, and Rowena King, with new cast members this season including Cherry Jones, Brandon P. Bell, Sinov Carlson, Cody Fern, Thomas Lamarcus, Alexandra Siddiq, Academy Award-winning actor Troy Kutzer, and Pilo Asbeck. Now, this is a show and honestly a book and a story that I found really, really hard. It made me feel very, very dumb. It's a very, very vast and I'd say hardcore sci-fi, steeped within the sci-fi traditions, and really a lot of what we know in terms of sci-fi tropes were spawned from the writings of Isaac Asimov. So, my question, after 2 seasons, can you dive into season 3 after potentially just watching the recap? Which, honestly, is a piece of work in itself on the Apple TV YouTube channel.
Yeah, I'd say it'd be really tough to jump in at this point without having seen the first 2 seasons. I think the people who do the recaps for this show have a particularly difficult job because they're covering so much, right? The series is covering hundreds and thousands of years, and there's so much happening in the first 2 seasons. And the series itself even does a lot of recapping of plot through narration from Gale. And even with that narration, I still had to pause a couple times and remember a little bit, like, wait a second, what was the history there again? And then this week on the Apple TV YouTube channel, they put out some of the best moments from the first 2 seasons. And rewatching some of those scenes, I was like, oh, wow, I forgot some of the details even then. So I would say if all you care about is just being along for the plot and seeing what happens with the Mule and this next step in the galaxy, then yeah, you could probably follow along. And if you're watching with someone who's seen the first 2 seasons, maybe they can add a little bit of detail for you. But I think if you really care about the lore and the history and what's going on beneath the surface beyond just, things blowing up and people fighting each other, then you're really going to want to have seen the first 2 seasons, because even a recap doesn't do full justice to, as you said, the depth of what's been going on for the past 2 seasons on Foundation and continuing into the 3rd.
Now, in terms of the characters, there's a lot going on this season. Where do we want to start? I guess we have to start with the main threat, the Mule.
I think we do. And this season, the Mule is played by Pilo Asbeck, who is a threat that loomed over the 2nd season, but just in very small clips. They mentioned the Mule several times throughout the 2nd season, but we didn't really get to see anything from him. Now he's very present because that's where we're catching up with the timeline. That's where this 3rd arc of Foundation really begins, is with him coming onto the scene. And it's interesting to see the legend manifested in current events of the series, because as you know, when someone goes from that legend premonition status to actually meeting them, things don't ever go exactly the way that you think they're going to. And we see that immediately from the beginning of season 3. He's extremely powerful and menacing, but there's also really strange groundedness to him in the real world that we haven't seen from the likes of Empire, where he's on the ground with other people, he's interacting with others. He doesn't feel separate, and I'm not saying I feel any kind of personal connection to him, because you know immediately from the first scene with him exactly what this guy's about and that he's a villain, and there's no question at all about that. But he just feels a little bit more real and connected to the world of Foundation than, you know, the three brothers who we spent so much time with but have always kind of been in their own separate sphere. The mule's just right in the middle of all of it, and I think that's a cool thing to finally see him, after all this build-up, see him really enter the fray here.
I think it's interesting how you describe him as well, because you're almost describing him as like a populist, right? Which is very much how Harry Seldon was described in what I think maybe the second season of Foundation.
Yeah, and Harry Seldon, played by Jared Harris, he's been through a lot of eras, you might say. He's been through a lot of phases, and let's just be honest, there's more than one Harry that we get to know, even just in his personality and who he is and how he presents himself to different people. And what I think is so interesting about his character, based on what very little I know about the book series, is that the show has kept him around a lot longer than he actually existed in the books. And of course, in a series that's taking place over multiple hundreds of years, people fade into the background and aren't nearly as important. And I wonder if we're going to see that happen this season with Harry. As the Foundation is moving into its next era, it's becoming more of a galactic superpower. I wonder what his role really is going to be, as he's not really the figurehead of that anymore, and he gets a little bit more disconnected from what the Foundation is doing. So I think that's going to be interesting. I think that might be a little bit more of moving towards the books in that sense, just of letting him fade and letting other characters take the lead. And I think especially Gail Dornick, played by Lula Bell, is going to be the person to watch. You know, she's been kind of the audience stand-in, the closest thing the show has to a core protagonist, which is hard to say given its breadth and depth. But she's the one we've been with throughout the first two seasons, and will be with throughout this third season through the magic of cryo sleep and keeping herself very young and keeping the same actress around to play her. But I think what's cool this third season is she's come a really long way in her abilities as she prepares to fight the mule. And so it's cool to see her. We've known for a really long time that there was something more to her. There's a reason that she plays such a big role in the plan to save the galaxy. And now we're finally finding out exactly what she's capable of. And I think we're going to see more of that throughout the season. And I'm excited to see that part of her come out.
Now, in terms of the Empire, because the Empire is not just one person. Well, I guess in a way it kind of is, but isn't. That's confusing. Can you make sense of that?
Well, that's another thing about, like, if you were jumping into season 3 without having seen the first two, it's like, okay, what is with these three guys who all call themselves Cleon, and they're on this weird cycle? So the original Cleon decided he was the only one fit to run the galaxy forever, and so he decided to start this process of cloning himself, and there's always three of them, Brother Dawn, Brother Day, and Brother Dusk, and they kind of mentor each other as brothers, and then the one in the middle takes the lead. And what's cool this season is we're catching the trio towards the end of one of their cycles, which is not a place that we've spent much time before. And so one thing that I should have caught in the trailer segment, and I got to admit, I didn't, but Lee Pace's hair is so long in this season, and I should have known that would be indicating, of course, he's moving towards his Dusk era. You know, he's an older Day, and so that's where we're catching them. And so the younger Brother Dawn is getting ready to take over, and it's always interesting to see what traits of the Cleon come out in each generation, because they've mentioned in the past that there's some drifting, I think is what they call it. And as the generations go on, of course, you keep cloning someone over and over, things are going to get a little bit weird towards the end there. And they definitely take some interesting directions with the Empire brothers this season. But I think it's cool that we're getting to see a different phase of life for them, see them contend with some things that we haven't before. And of course, they're contending with the fact that, their galaxy could be crumbling right before their very eyes, as predicted by Dr. Harry Seldon. So yeah, they've got a lot on their plate, but I just love what the show does with Empire, and giving these actors opportunities to play different versions of the same character. I think they do a great job with it every season, and what I've seen so far from this season, it looks like they're doing the same thing here. behind Empire, of course, is the mysterious Demerzel, played by Laura Byrne, who is quite possibly the most interesting character, I think, in the series. Very complex person, whereas a lot of these characters have very clear motivations and things that they're trying to do. Even someone like Dr. Harry Seldon, eventually he reveals what he's really up to with the Foundation and how his desires weren't quite as benevolent as maybe he had initially presented them as. But Demerzel is someone who is constantly conflicted within herself because she is an android. She's programmed to serve Empire, but sometimes her own needs or her own best interests don't line up with that. And so it's interesting to see her try to navigate that. And we never fully know what's going on, behind those eyes, I think. She's been reading the Prime Radiant now for a century and is preparing herself for what life could look like if Empire isn't able to stave off the darkness. And also turning to her faith, which I thought was a really interesting storyline in season 1. And I'm excited to see them dive more into that in season 3. Again, this world is so vast. There's so much to it, so much culture and different ideologies. And I love getting to explore different aspects of that. And I think she's going to be an opportunity for that as well. But I think beyond even what happens with Empire, I'm interested to see what happens with Demerzel and what path she ends up following as things continue to play out.
Now, there are, I would say, if someone's just listening to this and they're fresh on Foundation and they're listening to, the different things that we're talking about in terms of vastness and I think in terms of culture as well, especially when it comes to religion, you may see some similarities to Dune in some ways. And I would say the show up until this point has been very vast and very grand, and the special effects have been incredible. But the photography in this season and just the overall production and the look of this season is a real step up this time in terms of the artistry involved, I think. Would you agree? I mean, there are some shots, even in the trailers, which honestly blew my mind.
Yeah, I think it's next level, and that's saying something coming from a series that has always looked so good. But one thing we talk about every season with this show is how expensive it is to make, because they're traveling the world to these incredible locations, and some of that stuff you just can't replicate with a set. And they find these beautiful places, even going back to places that we've been before, like the second Foundation. I think seeing how it changes over time and the way it's shot differently as time progresses, I think that has been really cool to see. But yeah, like you said, it really is next level, and they're doing an incredible job there. And it's a beauty to take in. And I think what it really does is all the work that goes into location scouting, set design, costuming, cinematography, it creates such a cohesive and immersive story that sometimes when I read a book, I feel like I can see it playing out as a movie in my mind. When I'm reading a good fiction book, and that's what it feels like watching Foundation. It's like what I would picture if I was reading it, and it's just so rich and well done. And I think everyone behind the scenes deserves to be applauded for that. And the good news is, Sigmund, we're just at the beginning of the season, so we've got many, many more episodes of it to take in. So as we're singing its praise, we're doing so, I would say, maybe even a little bit early, because there's so much more to take in throughout the season. And based on the trailers, there's just going to be more great locations, more great effects, and so much more of the world of Foundation to enjoy.
Talking a little bit about going further into the season, what is it that you're looking forward to the most about this season going forward?
I think there's still a lot of questions that the audience doesn't have answers to, and so I'm hoping to get some more of those answers. Obviously, I don't want them to play the whole hand, because that would mean the show is over, and that's not what we want. But I want the audience to get more of a glimpse into what's going on, not just in terms of the present day scenario, but the greater plan of this radiant that Harry and Demerzel and Gale have been staring into for centuries now. We get little glimpses of, like, okay, we've talked about the first crisis, the second crisis, we're getting ready for the third crisis. We find out this season there are 10 of them. So we're starting to get a little bit more of what the roadmap is going to look like. And I'm really encouraged by the end of the first episode, the season has a very clear direction and inciting point. And so I think they've actually, more so even than past seasons, set up very clearly with this first episode of the season what the arc we can expect. And of course, we don't know exactly what's going to happen, but I think we have an idea of, okay, this is where we're starting, why we're starting here, and this is the direction that we're going. And I really appreciate that, because I feel like with a show like Foundation, it's easy to get lost in the mix of all the time jumps and trying to figure out who's who and everything. And I feel like this season feels like, at least from the first episode, it's very focused and it has a clear direction that's going. So I'm excited by that.
You and me both, Devon. You and me both. You can stream the season 3 debut of Foundation now on Apple TV Plus and look forward to new episodes every Friday throughout the season. A highlight for the summer, I think, not only amongst sci-fi fans and fans of Foundation, but I think for TV lovers in general. And talking of highlights, this is something that we haven't really done before on the show, and I'm so glad that we're not waiting until the end of the year, because this first half of 2025 has been astounding. It's been highlight after highlight across TV shows and movies. I did want to very quickly, though, say, I get to a lot more films than Devon probably has the opportunity to, because I don't have certain responsibilities that Devon does, and I'm sure at times there are films he'd love to watch in place of some of the films and some of the shows that he has to watch to keep a certain someone entertained. So this is our 2025 so far, both in terms of movies and TV shows. We're going to pick our top 5 from each, and then we're going to get into what we're looking forward to. Briefly, but I say briefly, I ramble on. So without further ado, Devon, movies, top 5. What have you got at your number 5?
All right, my number 5 is going to be Fountain of Youth, an Apple original film that came out recently. Of course, directed by Guy Ritchie, written by James Vanderbilt, starring Natalie Portman and John Krasinski as a pair of siblings who go on a globetrotting adventure looking for the Fountain of Youth. I put this one on my list because I had a lot of fun with it. I did actually watch this with my family. This is one of those ones, as you mentioned, Sigmund, a lot of family viewing for me this year. And so this was one we could all watch together, and we had a lot of fun with it. It's a format that takes me back to my youth with things like National Treasure, and I feel like this could be that for the next generation and could even spawn on a series of sequels and more adventures in this vein. So I had a lot of fun with Fountain of Youth. I enjoyed it quite a bit, and I appreciated it especially as something from Apple that you can watch as a family, which is not something we get in terms of feature films a ton, and I enjoyed that quite a bit. So that's why it's number 5 on my list. What did you have at number 5 on your list?
Well, I've got a film that actually just made its theatrical debut in the US, but I got to see it at Sundance, the online portion of it, and that is Sorry Baby. And this follows Agnes, and something bad has happened to Agnes, but life kind of goes on for everyone else. But once a beloved friend on the brink of a major milestone visits, Agnes starts to realise just how stuck she's been and begins to work through how to move forward. This is a intense, hopeful, and incredibly smart film about sexual assault with incredible performances, headlined by its lead Ava Victor, who also wrote and directed this film, this being her filmmaking debut. And this was a film that was very much on my radar going in to Sundance earlier this year. And I genuinely think that Ava Victor could pretty much do anything that she put her mind to when it comes to filmmaking and writing and even acting. It's a really heartfelt performance, but also there's a great supporting cast here. And whilst the story is seeped in something so, repulsive and something that should never happen to any human being, there is a lot of hope here It's just a beautiful, beautiful film. It saw its theatrical debut recently in the United States. I think it's going to be a couple of months before it makes its way to the TV app through A24. A film that, honestly, there's so many great films this year that kind of talk about personal aspects and recovery and almost like therapy in a way. We'll find that subject again during the countdown of our TV shows from me. But yeah, just a beautiful, beautiful film. Sorry, baby. My number 4 is something very, very different. This is a lot more visceral, a lot more in your face. It's warfare, and it is a visually, and I'd say audibly, exhilarating film. It's a story of survival where the viewer is dropped into a crazy situation in the middle of a surveillance mission gone wrong for a platoon of Navy SEALs. This is less an action film as more of a horror in a lot of ways, depicting the horrors of war, and is a follow-up from Alex Garland, who brought us Civil War last year, and of course, 28 years later as well. So he's been quite prolific this year. But this film stars Will Poulter, who has also been prolific, and I think has been the best in a lot of films, and also just been the best part of a lot of bad films this year. But this is one of the good ones. Cosmo Jarvis, Joseph Quinn, and Kit Connor, and as I said, Alex Garland directed this alongside Ray Mendoza, and the story is actually based on Mendoza's experiences during the Iraq War as a US Navy SEAL. This is a film that's going to stick with me for years to come, and I think it really kind of accentuates the reports that you get, unfortunately, on a daily basis of wars happening throughout the world, whether that's Ukraine and Russia or Gaza. Shocking stuff, but brilliantly put together. Not a film I'll probably watch again anytime soon, though. What's your number 4?
Yeah, mine is one that I think is shocking in a different way, maybe more on an interpersonal level, and one that I agree with you. It's not one that I could rewatch a lot, but I do hope to revisit someday in the future, and that's Echo Valley, another Aboriginal film that we talked about not too long ago. Of course, stars Julianne Moore and Sydney Sweeney as a mother and daughter who the daughter is suffering from drug addiction and sucks her mother into that world and the trouble that she's gotten herself into, and really takes it to another level. And we see really Julianne Moore's character as the mother go to great lengths to protect her daughter and ultimately her family. It's directed by Michael Pierce and written by Brad Inglesby. And this one's just really powerful. I like films that stick with me, that make me think over time. This is one that has continued to be at front of mind for me and just expose me to another side of what a lot of families go through in a way that you don't see because it happens behind closed doors. And maybe you hear the stray story here or there, but actually seeing it portrayed on screen, I think impacted me a lot, made me more sympathetic to all families in that scenario, and something that, again, I've just continued to think through, and I think it's worth watching, even though it is a very tough watch. Not one to watch with family, for sure. Not like Fountain of Youth in that sense, but one that's definitely worth checking out.
Fantastic film, and I'd say sound design in that film is incredible as well.
Yes.
So, yeah, fantastic. What have you got for us for number 3?
Number 3, again, a totally different direction here, but I'm going to do Thunderbolts with the little asterisk, the latest MCU film. This one, of course, stars Florence Pugh, Sebastian Stan, Wyatt Russell, David Harbour, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, and others returning in their roles from the wider MCU. This is like Marvel's take on the Suicide Squad, basically. It's the anti-heroes. It's the people who have been cast to the side. They get brought together for an operation. And what I like about this one especially is that there's been a lot of building up within the MCU, especially the Disney Plus series, to this team up. And it answered a lot of questions, and also just featured some characters that I think haven't gotten the limelight in the way that they deserve, and really gave them an opportunity to shine. And and be the heroes here, which I appreciate, while of course setting up the next phase of the MCU, because they've always got, one foot out the door leaning towards the Fantastic Four First Steps, which is coming out very, very soon. But yeah, Thunderbolts, I thought it was great team up film within the MCU. One that I think brought a lot of people back into the Marvel fold who had stepped away during some of the multiverse stuff. And I think it's a great re-entry point before we get back to the Avengers starting back up next year.
Very cool. This nearly made my honorable mentions.
Nice.
I think a solid 7 out of 10 for me in terms of Marvel films, which is pretty high on the totem pole, considering I haven't got the time to watch all of the TV shows. So to see something that, of course, there's a lot of backstory leading up to it, but something that actually worked really well on its own merits as a piece of work, I thought was very, very good. And I really felt like in this film was the first time in a long, long time where the villain actually felt like a threat, both forms of him. So yeah, very, very cool. My number 3 is something very different again. And this is a film that I don't think anyone's really talked about. I think it got a very, very limited run in 2024 during the festivals, and it's just received a limited run in the US, so no doubt this is going to be destined for streaming soon. But it's a film called Caught by the Tides, and this is about two people in China deeply in love who enjoy city life together through singing and dancing, and their happiness though is cut short when one of them suddenly departs to seek opportunities elsewhere, and the other sets out to find their partner. It's a romance drama on the surface, but below that, this is actually telling a much deeper story of China's big transformation over the last 2 decades. And if you've seen Richard Linklater's Boyhood, this is very much of the same kind of thing, but telling the story of China. So, yeah, received a theatrical run in May, awaiting a PVOD release, and that is Caught by the Tides.
Awesome. Yeah, this is not one that I had heard about until we were putting these lists together, and I think this is one that's well worth shouting out. Based on what I've read about it, it seems like it belongs on this list for sure, so thanks for highlighting it. On to number 2, Sigmund. What have you got number 2 on your movie list?
Number 2. This is so difficult. Oh, it really was. This was difficult because it kept swaying between 2 and 1, 2 and 1. And I think I've got it right, but my number 2 for this year so far is Sinners. I love the presentation, the IMAX aspect ratio. It's got one of my favourite sequences of the year. I think horror fans are going to like this. There's a good balance between the drama and horror and the fantastical elements of it. This Ryan Coogler film, which is an original film, it's not based off of any big property. This felt like a big film from, like a Christopher Nolan or a Quentin Tarantino. Big budget filmmaking with artful intention. It's just a fascinating film. There's music at play. There's the idea of the white man trying to reappropriate other people's culture, but then there's also a deeper element in which this character who kind of comes out of the shadows could be trying to find some kind of reconnection with his own lost ancestry through the traditional song. And it's just a really, really interesting film. Lots of different elements, and it's a vampire film, right? So it's really, really cool. Also, the relationship between Smoke and Stack grows throughout the runtime, and those characters are just 2 masterful performances from the one and only Michael B. Jordan. And yeah, I don't want to give away too much. We have talked about this film a couple of times already on the podcast during highlights and whatnot. But if you have not yet seen Sinners, this is a must-see.
Yeah, I mean, Ryan Coogler, Michael B. Jordan, Haley Steinfeld, it's really hard to argue with an original film with those people in front of and behind the camera. And you mentioned, there are a lot of films I haven't had a chance to see yet this year, and that's why some of them aren't on the list. So not on my list, but I think it's definitely one that I want to check out, especially given your high praise for it.
Yeah, and I just want to mention very quickly Jack O'Connell. That's the actor I was trying to figure out. Remick, he is the Irish folk singer.
Oh, yeah.
That reveals himself to be a vampire. Such a good film. What have you got for us at number 2?
Number 2 for me is a documentary. It's Deaf President Now from Niall DeMarco, Davis Guggenheim, telling the story of the Gallaudet Five and their fight for a deaf president at the world's only deaf university. I just think that it's a story that has touched me so much. The storytelling was so well done. We talked about, when we highlighted it and recapped it, about the different elements of trying to get you to experience a little bit of the deaf community's experience and see the world from their point of view, and also just appreciate their expressiveness. And I loved it so much. This is a film that, another one that's just really made me think, stuck with me. I wasn't expecting to put a documentary so high on my list of films this year. That's so stacked with, there's been so many great narrative films this year, but this one for me, it's unrivaled. My number 2 for the first half of 2025.
I think, having seen Deaf President Now at Sundance, so quite a while back now, if I would have watched it on general release, it would be right up there as well.
Yeah.
So this is definitely a film that I want to revisit again before the end of the year. But yeah, a fantastic film. It's funny because our lists have been very, very different. But there's a film that hasn't been mentioned yet. And I just want to very quickly go back to my number 2 pick a moment and just say, from a standpoint, and this is why this film got to number 1, is for the theatrical experience. There's something that I feel like may be lost with the film that we've both picked at number 1 when it comes to streaming or comes to watching it at home, that Sinners probably won't. That's why I was a little bit to and fro between my 2 and 1. But I think it's quite clear what our number 1 is, because we both had that theatrical experience not so long ago.
Well, of course, we're talking about F1, the movie, from director Joseph Kosinski, produced by Jerry Bruckheimer, and starring Brad Pitt, Damson Idris, Kerry Condon, Javier Bardem, and so many more. And yeah, I think that anyone who was trying to predict what the number 1 would be would probably know, at least on my end, that F1 was going to be it. I think for you, it's still very much a toss-up between Sinners and F1, and it'll be interesting to see, like you said, with the home releases, if that changes through rewatches throughout the year and as more people get to see it. But to me, F1, it's not only about the theatrical experience, but also the communal experience of just how excited everyone's been for it. And, of course, the film itself, very enjoyable, and the filmography with the racing scenes, next level, totally innovative and impressive, and just such an enjoyable, true summer blockbuster thrill ride of a film that was so much fun to take in and look so great. But also there was just something to me about the success of it all, and just how it felt like in the moment as it was releasing, that people were coming together around it and people were having conversations about it. It was the water cooler moment type thing that we want from our entertainment, but don't necessarily always get, especially with theatrical and just the state of the industry. Sometimes those conversations can get kind of out of sync because people experience things so differently. But this felt like one that so many people were going out and seeing together and having conversations about. And it's just a really fun moment for me this year that I'm definitely going to remember.
This is also a film for me, and it is the shared experience that I'm going to cherish. I mean, obviously had a great time with Jonathan and Benjamin when I saw it at Waterloo IMAX. I went back to Waterloo IMAX with my family. I took my family to see it again. So it's an expensive film. And these are people that you almost have to drag to the cinema. and they were absolutely blown away. I think I've mentioned previously about my grandparents and their history of motor racing, or at least alluded to it. But there was a moment where, as we get the first shots on Silverstone, my grandfather tapped me on the shoulder and said, "That corner right there is where I lost all of my teeth." And then I remembered back to a Christmas many, many moons ago when I didn't know he had false teeth, and he took them out and chased me with them whilst no one could see. And it petrified me. So it's moments like that you're always going to remember. And that's why the shared movie-going experience is so special. Kind of as they went from track to track, seeing my grandparents point to the screen and say, "Oh, like, remember we were there?" And the screen, the IMAX screen, is so big and it's so vivid that they can see everything, whereas they can't necessarily see everything at home on the screen. And we've got the brightest screen that was available, so that's why F1 made it to number one for me on the spot. Again, we'll have to see how it performs at home, but the theatrical experience, if you've not yet gone and seen F1 the movie, you're really doing yourself a disservice. So yeah, there are top 5 for the year so far, and I think that's important. We'll get into what we're looking forward to, but some honourable mentions. Quick list, but I do want to talk about most of them. Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. Again, another theatrical experience that absolutely blew me away. There are certain scenes that it makes you question, how did you do that? There's a particular sequence in Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning in the submarine which just made me feel absolutely mind blown. Kind of going into like more independent dramas, Bob Trevino likes it. It was a film that I highlighted, a very kind of small indie film, and it's about this lady who she's often playing the role of caretaker to people like her father, who should have been caring really for her. And Lily Trevino longs for a familial connection, having been abandoned by her mother as a child and then suddenly by her father in her 20s. And Bob Trevino works long hours alone at a construction company to support his wife's scrapbooking habit. But the couple endured a lot in the past decade, and Bob has sought to put his wife first to the point of ignoring his own feelings and a need for friendship, meaning and connection. That is, until he gets an unexpected Facebook message from a stranger, and Lily and Bob's blossoming friendship becomes a vital source of connection and healing in both of their lives. John Leguizamo and Barbie Ferreira in the leads. Fantastic film. Highly, highly recommended. Then we've got Secret Mall Apartment. This is a documentary about a hilariously unbelievable true story behind the urban legend of a group of friends who created a secret apartment in the busy Providence Place Mall in the early 2000s, which I knew nothing about this story at all, but the documentary is hilarious. Then we got Magazine Dreams. This is a very dark story about someone who can't connect really with other people because he is so focused on his goal of superstardom and becoming the best bodybuilder in the world. It verges on like Joker territory in some ways and has a very, very dark progression, but this is a film that I still think about daily. Then we got Bring Her Back, a recent highlight on the show, a tragic story of a mother trying to bring her own child back at any cost. Scary but also heartbreakingly tragic. And then for the comedy, Friendship, ridiculous comedy focusing on male friendships, kinship, and the other things that aren't always talked about. And lastly, 28 years later, tonally pretty interesting, genre shifting, which is interesting considering this is the third film, but it looks to be the first in what could be an expansive and really interesting trilogy going forward. So they are my honourable mentions. What have you got for us?
For my honorable mentions, I do want to shout out Sinners, a film I haven't had a chance to see yet, but would be on my list. I have to imagine if I had gotten a chance to see it. So look out for it on my end of 2025 list. That's my prediction for the end of the year. And then the other one that I wanted to mention as an honorable mention was The Gorge, because I really almost put that one on my list as well. Miles Teller, Anya Taylor-Joy, a fun romantic action film that I think took a lot of big swings, and I enjoyed quite a bit over the Valentine's Day weekend. So that one's almost made the list. Didn't quite, but I wanted to shout it out as well.
Very cool. Very cool. All right, let's talk about TV shows. I know I'm the movie buff, but you're the TV guy. Any Marvel?
One Marvel. I try to keep the Disney Plus to a minimum, I promise. Although when we get to honorable mentions, I make no promises there. But number 5 is Daredevil Born Again. Such a great show within the Marvel Cinematic Universe, of course, starring Charlie Cox as the Daredevil himself. I enjoyed the original series on Netflix. I don't think I finished it. I think it ended up falling off of that part of the Marvel world for a while, which I know is going to surprise you, Sigmund, that I haven't seen 100% of everything within the Marvel universe. This show, you don't have to have any history with the character to dive into it. It's a really cool, different corner of the Marvel world that does take place in New York, because everything important in the Marvel world happens in New York. But it's just an interesting, different genre, very much about hand-to-hand combat, very violent, but also some really interesting drama and tension there, and some characters that I was really happy to get to revisit after being away from them for so long since the Netflix days. And I hope that someday Daredevil moves into the movie world, but he's also a great anchor for the TV series as well, and I'm happy that Marvel brought him back. So it's my number 5 for the year. What about you?
Well, my number 5 is The Four Seasons. This is a kind of little known show on Netflix, starring Tina Fey, Steve Carell, Will Forte, and Colman Domingo. It's a limited series remake of a 1981 romantic comedy film, written and directed by and starring Alan Alda. This is stunning television. Season 2's already confirmed. It's easygoing, but it's a deep exploration of middle age and relationships and friendship, and it's just a really, really good show. Every episode, I think, is like 25, verging on 30 minutes. There's a couple that basically split, and then a younger partner comes in for one of those members, and they're having to deal with the complications and the politics of it all from the a friendship standpoint and a circle of friends. It's just a really well put together show, great performances, and I cannot wait to see more. This was one that I binged, and I don't binge a lot.
Awesome. Yeah, I haven't seen this one yet, but it's on my radar of things I need to check out. A great pick for number 5. What have you got for number 4?
Number 4, I couldn't pick one, so I had to split between 3. Because I'm so indecisive, but there's a good reason for it. I feel like they all kind of tonally are the same in a lot of ways. Well, okay, that's my excuse for picking 3 at 4. But my 3, I'm going to start with Couples Therapy. It's on its 4th season. I'd never heard of this show before because I'm a on and off again Paramount Plus Showtime subscriber. This is a docu-series that achieves something only few doc-series can do, and that is select interesting couples to open up to the world, and Dr. Oren Gorlnik, who is a relationship counsellor. You get to be in on these therapy sessions and see their growth and see how they're understanding one another. And I took a lot out of this just in terms of what they learnt from one another about communication. It's something I think everyone struggles with at times. And yeah, it's just a brilliantly put together show that I've just found at season 4. That follows another season 4, and that's The Bear. It's still brilliant, even if it doesn't quite hit the heights of season 2. and its 10 episodes flew by so fast. So I've watched through twice already. Just The Bear is just brilliant. We had a sandwich party in ode of the show, and yeah, we had a blast with that one. And then The Pit is my final pick on my fourth spot. One is about therapy. One is about someone that needs to have therapy and does feel quite therapeutic. And this show makes me need therapy afterwards because it's fast paced, it's well acted, it's well written, it's a medical drama with more importance really on the realism of both the cases and the characters, until you get to the point where you realise that all of these kind of personal antidotes and personal bits of melodrama that are happening are all happening in a single shift. So my kind of way of summing this all up is it's ER but on speed. So they are my 3 picks for number 4, and I promise I'm not doing that again. But I always find a way of cheating the system, as you know, Devon.
Yeah, it's okay. Top 5, top 7. We'll make it work. It's all good.
What have you got for us at number 4?
My number 4 is The Studio, brilliant Apple original comedy, of course, led by Seth Rogen. It's perfect for people like you and I who care so much about the film and TV industry because it centers around making films and all the compromises that go into it. But beyond just the setting and the way it speaks to the moment in the industry, I think it also is just hilarious, and the things that it does with different styles and all the cameos. I mean, geez, incredible cameos. I still can't get over Zac Efron in the Noir episode. That one still just, I love that so much. So it's just a hilarious show. It did stress me out at first, and it is, one of those ones that I think as you're getting into it, it is very high paced, a lot of yelling. Once you get into that, I think it makes the way for comedy. And then on a technical level, the way they shot it with all the long shots and using the techniques that they did, such an impressive show on so many levels. And really, I think it's great to see how much it connected with people. And of course, Apple's thrilled with it, and they've renewed it for a second season. And I have no idea how they're going to top the first season, but I know that this was a special moment with this show, and one that I enjoyed so much this first half of the year.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's funny because you're Zac Efron and I'm like, Martin Scorsese, how did they get him?
Exactly.
And The Studio is my number 3 this year so far. Seth Rogen as a troubled movie studio executive who interacts with all kinds of Hollywood talent who are playing heightened versions of themselves, it's just the perfect formula for me. As soon as the screeners became available, I watched them, and then I watched them again, and then I watched them again. I think I've watched this show 5 times, and then certain episodes multiple times, because this is a show that, whilst it can be described as kind of, a mix between Curb Your Enthusiasm and that cringe humor mixed with Robert Altman's The Player, which, of course, The Player is very much exercised throughout The Studio. There is an element to this comedy that every episode is so well written that you can just kind of go back and actually pick an episode, whereas so much now relies on, the sequence of it all and watching a whole season and binging that again. But this, you can really just kind of pick out your favorite episodes. And for me, the one take was incredible. The one with Matt Remick as he goes off on a date night that goes terribly wrong, and he's talked down to about movies and their importance, and then probably talks up a little bit too much the importance of movies compared to some medical breakthroughs, and it's just a brilliant comedy, and I cannot wait to see more. But until that second season comes, I'll be watching this again and again and again.
Yeah, when it comes back around for the second season, we may have to do an updated play count and see how many times you've watched the first season, Sigmund, because I imagine you'll hit double digits at least by then. Just because of the way that our lists line up, do you want to go ahead and do your number 2, and then we can come back to mine?
Absolutely. My number 2 is something that honestly slipped under my radar because it's not something I normally go for. Common Side Effects. This is Adult Swim's latest mature animation that follows 2 high school pals who discover a new cure-all drug and a conspiracy between US government and Big Pharma to suppress all knowledge of said drug. It's from co-creators Joseph Bennett, who was behind the excellent Scavengers reign, and Steve Healy, who wrote for 30 Rock, Veep, and The Office. Also has as executive producers both Greg Daniels and Mike Judge of King of the Hill and Beavis and Butthead fame. And this is a show, it's just really, really well put together. It looks like an Adult Swim animation, and it has heightened characteristics of all of the characters. Their eyes are massive and wide, and it's a little bit out there. But whilst people will look at this on the surface as a cartoon, I look at it as this conspiracy thriller. It's just so well executed that it got that high up on my list. Number 2, Common Side Effects. Incredible stuff.
Very cool. I love to see one like this high on your list, to know that, that genre is pushing the boundaries continually as well. I think that's good to see. I think putting together these lists this year in particular is difficult because there's just so much great stuff out there. And I think just the quality of the output this year is what goes into my number 3 pick, which I think is going to be surprising to some folks. And that is Severance, Season 2, a show that gripped us both. We couldn't get enough of it. We did a whole themed episode about it, which still one of the high points for me of our podcast this year, Sigmund, was going down to the severed floor with you and having our innies fill in for us, which was a lot of fun. Watching it week to week was just an incredible experience with everyone. Again, like F1, it was a conversation piece in a way that I don't feel like we always get these days, and I loved that so much. All the theories, of course, some of them so wildly out there, and as the season came to a conclusion, we started to get a little bit of an indication of what's going on while still keeping us on the hook for the 3rd season, which we know is coming. But this show, I didn't know how they could keep it going from season 1 to season 2 in terms of the quality, the storytelling, keeping that tone. I mean, that is a difficult tone to maintain and not slip into. I mean, you could easily slip into parody or just, go the other way and lose the humor. And what they've accomplished with this series is just absolutely incredible. There's a reason everyone still talks about Severance. There's a reason it's the thing that people can't wait to come back. And of course, as production news comes out, as it's getting ready to film, everyone will be eating up every little detail and making their theories based on whatever they hear about what's happening on set. And, I can't wait for that. I love it. And this show gives us that. And it gave that to us early this year after a long wait. And it was well worth the wait. I think you probably agree with me on that, right, Sigmund?
Oh, yes, I do. But we'll be talking about Severance again in a little bit. What have you got for us for your number 2 pick this year? So far, I should say.
Yes, yeah, so far. First half of 2025, a series that continues to haunt me. I think you'll probably see with both my number 2 and my number 1 picks the influence of the major change in my life of becoming a father, and just how that continues to influence the way I receive things. And so these are subjective lists. This is my list of where I'm at in 2025. So my number 2 is going to be Adolescence, the series on Netflix from Jack Thorne and Stephen Graham, who also stars as the father of a 13-year-old boy accused of killing his classmate in a very violent manner. And as the series goes on, it dives into kind of some of the influences that went into that event, specifically the online world of chauvinism and hatred that young boys are exposed to these days, and the way that can impact their views of relationships and other people, and ultimately lead them down these violent paths, unfortunately. And so this one, it's not a feel-good show by any means, if you can't tell, but it's one that I think is very, very impactful. Each episode is shot as a one take. There's only 4-hour-long episodes. And so you're just kind of in these moments with these people in real time as they're experiencing the news and then going through different aspects of the process with his family and the way it all impacts his loved ones and the people around him. And so it's one that really stuck with me as a parent who, eventually will have to contend with, exposing, what kids are exposed to online and protecting them. And just honestly, it's something I think that we all in the world as people who use the internet have to deal with, these algorithms that can spiral us towards conspiracies and content that just isn't good for anybody. And so it's one that really stuck with me, made me think a lot, impacted me. And it's my number 2 for the first half of 2025.
Very, very cool. I saw it on your list, and it was nearly on my list as well, but I wanted to make way. It's very impactful. It's almost, honestly, it felt nightmarish, right? And I'm not a father, but it made me imagine, and it put me in that spot. Wow. My number 1 is Severance Season 2. I just think, from what you were saying, it was very much a conversation piece. It'd been so many years since we were left on such an incredible cliffhanger from the season 1. I felt an affinity to the show because I had the opportunity also to interview cast members and people from behind the scenes on season 1 who are back again for season 2. Performances across the board, incredible. But the work from Jessica Lee Gagne as the OP was just sublime. There's shots that I still think about now, and this isn't a show that I've actually jumped back into for a rewatch, probably because it's also vivid and it's cached already, so I don't feel the need to go back and hit play just yet. I'm going to echo a lot of what you said, really, in the sense that it took things to another level without feeling like it wasn't Severance anymore. And I think you experienced that not just through the character growth, but also through the growth of the creativity involved in this last season. It felt bigger, and when one secret was uncovered, there was another door to enter and find out more from. And then that kind of just that juxtapose between, the different characters of Adam Scott and really the dual duty that he had to do in the later episodes. Just, fascinating. And that's going to be my number 1. I can't see it changing at the end of 2025. I really can't. But hey, we'll have to wait and see.
It's going to be tough to unseat Severance for sure. We've got a lot of 2025 left, so we'll have to check in at the end of the year and see where we're at. I'll be interested to see where I'm at with my number 1 as well, because this is a show that's actually still currently running, but it struck such a chord with me that it shot up to the top of my list. If we had done this a month ago, it probably would have looked very different. But for me right now, my number 1 series of 2025 so far is Stick on Apple TV Plus, led by Owen Wilson, created by Jason Keller. Who knew that a show about golf would strike such a chord with not just me, but so many people? I think Stick seems to be doing really well in terms of the conversation and, hitting the top of the Apple Original charts in the TV app. And I think that, we'll have to see when the season's over if it continues on. I hope it does. But even if it doesn't, for me, this season has just been so special. And again, this is completely subjective, and I'm a sap. I'm not a new dad anymore, I guess, but I still consider myself kind of in that realm where that's such a primary part of my identity. And this show spoke to so much of that. I think for me, and this is not an original comparison, but this is my Ted Lasso. It's that chosen family comedy, but it has a very different style of humor, I think, than Ted Lasso. Mm-hmm. And also it gets to the point so quickly in terms of just being upfront about the pain behind each character. There's so many laughs and moments of joy in the series, but they're not afraid to shy away from the very first episode, the fact that, Price is a broken man, and not because of some failed golf career, but for, real life reasons, for real loss. And they reveal it throughout the season more and more and go deeper and deeper. And some of the conversations that they have just feel so real and heartfelt. And even if two people are disagreeing on something, they can still say it lovingly and still be moving each other towards healing in such a beautiful way. It touches on parenthood, touches on loss in a way that just spoke to me so much. And again, I know I'm being biased here, but for me, this is my favorite show of the year so far as it continues to roll out. If you haven't checked out Stick, I highly recommend it. It's supposedly a golf comedy, but it's so much more than that. And I've loved it so much.
This is a show that, and I totally get why it's your number one. There are certain moments in this show that just strike you, and without warning as well. And then suddenly you're in a moment where you get to understand a little bit more about the grief that certain characters are going through, but in a way that is enlightening, as opposed to something that's heavy and weighing you down. It's really, really well put together. I wasn't too sure what to think of it when we were talking all of those months ago about, Stick, Owen Wilson. Well, I like Owen Wilson, cool, right? But really, what was it going to be? And yeah, I think this is one that's going to be overlooked by so many because people are going to go, oh, it's another Ted Lasso. It's better. Some honourable mentions for TV shows this year. Shrinking, incredible. Adults on FX, more cringe humour, but for like the Gen Z. Is it still Gen Z now? I don't know. Gen Alpha, maybe. But yeah, really, really cool. Etoile, I think I'm saying that correctly, on Amazon Prime. Really, really cool about like the ballet circuit, and cancelled after one season, but I really enjoyed it, and I highly recommend people check it out, even if there isn't necessarily going to be an end to the show. The performances, the story, the writing, all brilliantly put together. Then we've got the latest season of The Rehearsal, weird comedy docu-series, really interesting. And then I got to mention it because it is an experience that I don't think has been matched so far this year for immersive video, and that is Bull Ride. A fantastic experience, one that I don't think's been beaten yet, even though we had like a live Metallica concert and we had Bono and all of these different things. That Bull Ride experience was just so beautifully shot and so real, and it really felt like you were going through a journey with this bull rider and his family. Yeah, really, really special.
Absolutely. I want to second that honorable mention because I think that has been the best immersive release this year, and looking forward to more of those throughout the rest of the year. For my other honorable mentions, I do want to shout out Andor. It pained me not to have a Star Wars series on my top 5 list, but it didn't quite make it, but it was a great wrap up to that series this year. The Handmaid's Tale also wrapped up. Great ending to that series, which will continue on. There's a sequel series coming because nothing's ever really over, Sigmund, but great ending there. Your Friends and Neighbors, led by John Hamm and Olivia Munn and the rest of the crew there. Really great series. Really solid first season, and excited that they're setting up for the second one. And then I'm going to give another prediction for my end of the year list, Sigmund, because I have a feeling, it's very early, I have a feeling Foundation is going to be a contender for top 10 series of the year for me. I'm really enjoying the beginning of the second season, as we talked about in the highlight. And yeah, it's given me those vibes of like, I think this is going to be up there.
Okay, well, we'll wait and see. Let's talk about the rest of 2025 then. A few things that we're looking forward to. Starting with TV shows.
Yeah, I mean, I think anyone could have predicted this one. I can't wait for Acapulco next Wednesday, returning for its 4th and final season. Peacemaker is back next month on HBO Max, a super anti-hero series starring John Cena with a really odd sense of humor, and a show that I liked a lot during its first season. Speaking of Ryan Coogler, The Eyes of Wakanda is on Disney Plus August 27th. It's an animated series within the world of Black Panther, highlighting the world of Wakanda some more, which I think is great. The Morning Show is back on September 17th. And then Stranger Things, a series my wife got me into after the last season came out, and I've just been waiting like forever to see how that story ends. And it begins its final chapter on October 10th on Netflix. So those are the series that I'm looking forward to the rest of the year. How about you?
For me, Alien Earth from Noah Hawley. This is an expansion of the sci-fi horror franchise. Then when you got Chad Powers, which is Glenn Powell as a college footballer in a half-hour comedy series which sees him disguising himself as a different player after his playing career comes to an end following some bad decisions, and he comes up with the player name Chad Powers. So, yeah, that sounds interesting. And then we've got Euphoria Season 3, The Lockdown, Task, Blade Runner 2099, which I didn't even know was a show coming. Obviously, the follow-up to Blade Runner 2049. Then Death by Lightning on Netflix about the 20th president of the US. Looks like a great cast there. Welcome to Derry on HBO Max. And in terms of Apple, Slow Horses, The Morning Show, but also maybe one of these three. Wicaro 339, the new Vince Gilligan series that we've heard nothing about since it wrapped filming in September. Maybe the second season of Monarch. Or maybe even For All Mankind finally returns to our screens. And I think we see at least one of those before the end of the year. And what I think may happen is that we get a season of For All Mankind that then leads into the spin-off series in January. Because I know they've filmed or have been filming that quite a while back. So that would make a lot of sense, I think. But yeah, that's what I've got in terms of TV shows. In terms of films, I know you're not going to get round to watching many in the theatres, but you got a list either way.
Yeah, these are some that I'm going to be keeping an eye on, either for getting out for a date night or when they hit streaming, either way. But I'm really excited for the slate of films coming in the second half of 2025, starting with Eddington from Ari Aster, a modern-day Western starring Joaquin Phoenix and Pedro Pascal as opposing candidates in a mayoral race that goes way off the rails. It's actually in theaters this weekend in the U.S. This looks awesome and probably less traumatizing than the last Ari Aster film that I watched at your recommendation, Sigmund. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Fantastic Four First Steps is in just a few weeks. Then there's this film called Oh Hi from Sophie Brooks that stars Molly Gordon and Logan Lerman as a couple going on a romantic trip. And this is another one that just goes completely off the rails, because when the guy tells the girl he isn't looking for a serious relationship, she ties him up to a bed and tries to change his mind with the help of her friend, played by Geraldine Viswanathan. And yeah, this looks like a hilarious setup for a film, and one of those things I just can't wait to see how it plays out. That's also in theaters on July 25th. Then in September, on September 26th, we've got All of You from Brett Goldstein, of course, an Apple original film. And then in October, we've got Roof Man, which stars Channing Tatum as a thief who breaks out of jail and hides inside a Toys R Us store. It just sounds hilarious. Also stars Kirsten Dunst, Ben Mendelsohn, Peter Dinklage, Uzo Aduba, Juno Temple, Lakeith Stanfield, and more. And yeah, this looks like a fun one, not serious at all, but just one that will make me laugh quite a bit. A film series that I loved back in the day and is returning is Now You See Me, which is coming out with Now You See Me, Now You Don't in November. This one stars Jesse Eisenberg, Woody Harrelson, Dave Franco, and Isla Fisher as a group of magicians who take their art way too seriously. And I have to imagine the stakes are just going to be even higher this time around. So I really enjoyed the first two in that series. I'm excited that it's back. And then Sigmund, you know me, you know I love a musical, you know how I talked about Wicked, so I've got to go see Wicked for Good when it comes to theaters November 21st. And that'll be my big end of the year film that I can't wait to see.
Very, very cool. For me, I mean, Highest to Lowest, the latest Spike Lee film coming very soon. And then Eddington, as you mentioned, I'm very, very much looking forward to this. I have to wait an extra month to see this in theatres, and it's really funny what you were saying in terms of the trailer. If you look at the trailer for Beau is Afraid, it is not the film you ended up seeing. And that's all I'll say about Eddington from what I've heard early on, but really, really looking forward to that COVID-19 pandemic standoff. I've got a few, but I've got no dates. The Running Man, the remake from director Edgar Wright, starring Glenn Powell, looks like a comedy, looks like a mix between the original Running Man and like Baby Driver and that kind of thing from Edgar Wright. So I'm excited to check that one out. Marty Supreme follows Marty Mauser, a young man with a dream no one respects who goes to hell and back in pursuit of greatness. This is the fictionalized account of table tennis player Marty Reisman, directed by Josh Safdie and starring Timothée Chalamet and Gwyneth Paltrow. Then we've got The Smashing Machine from the other Safdie brother, Benny Safdie, starring Dwayne Johnson and Emily Blunt. We have Johnson as Mark Kerr, a former MMA fighter, in what looks to be a heartbreaking biopic. Tron Ares, directed by Joachim Running and starring Jared Leto, Jeff Bridges, Evan Peters and Greta Lee. This is the third film in the franchise, which sees a highly sophisticated program sent from the digital world into the real world on a dangerous mission, with a Nine Inch Nails soundtrack to boot. The last film got a Daft Punk soundtrack, so you know, I'm really looking forward to that one. Then we've got Together. This is a weird, it looks like a psychological body horror starring real-life married couple Alison Brie and Dave Franco. And it's about a couple who move to the countryside but find themselves encountering a mysterious force that horrifically causes changes in their bodies. And it's a directorial debut from Michael Shanks. Weapons is a film that I saw the trailer for with Jonathan Reed, who is also a father, and he said, no, not for me. This is an upcoming thriller mystery horror from Zach Kreger, whose last film I think was The Barbarian, which was really, really good. Really, really good, and had an incredible twist. But this film stars Julia Garner, Josh Brolin, and Alden Ehrenreich, and the film follows a community left questioning the disappearance of all but one child from a school classroom. Then we've got Caught Stealing. This is from the visionary director Darren Aronofsky, stars Austin Butler, and it's written by and based on the books by Charlie Huston and follows Hank Thompson, a former baseball player, as he's unwittingly plunged into a wild fight for survival in the downtown criminal underworld of 1990s New York City. Then we've got One Battle After Another, Paul Thomas Anderson's latest film about a group of ex-revolutionaries who reunite to rescue one of their own's daughter. And it stars Leonardo DiCaprio, Regina Hall, Sean Penn and more. Looks fantastic. But the two that I'm really looking forward to and kind of came out of nowhere for me, I knew nothing about this until doing some research of trailers, and we'll link to all of the trailers in a playlist in the show notes. Good Fortune. This is directed by Aziz Ansari, who I've loved for forever in pretty much everything he's done. And it stars Aziz alongside Keanu Reeves as his budget guardian angel, as he meddles in the lives of both Aziz, a struggling gig worker, and a wealthy venture capitalist, played by Seth Rogen. So pretty much says everything for me. Something quite light-hearted, looking forward to that. And finally, Begonia, directed by Yorgos Lanthimos and starring Emma Stone, Jesse Plemons, and Aidan Delbis. This is about two conspiracy-obsessed young men who kidnap the high-powered CEO of a major company, convinced that she is an alien intent on destroying planet Earth. So, Lots and lots of different things that I'm looking forward to, most of which I think I'm going to get to theatres for. But yeah, that's everything coming in 2025. Be interesting to see where our top 10 lists land at the end of the year. Of course, if there's something you're looking forward to that we've missed, or if there's something that you really enjoyed in 2025 up to this point that we've missed, let us know. You can find ways of contacting both of us in the show notes.
Well, that was our look back at the first half of 2025 in TV and films. Now let's talk about this week's news, Sigmund, starting with 4 original exclusive games coming to Apple Arcade on August 7th. The next batch of Apple Arcade games has been announced, and they include Play-Doh World, where players can craft their own characters and watch them spring to life. Worms Across Worlds, a multiplayer strategic turn-based action game from the award-winning Worm series. Let's Go Mighty Cat, a puzzle game where you play as a house cat turned interplanetary conqueror. And Everybody's Shogi, a beautifully reimagined take on the traditional Japanese strategy board game. Very cool to see all original games coming next month. And can't wait to give some of these a try. Apple Arcade, of course, continuing to grow. Lots of great games in the service already and more to come. We got a few trailers this week that we wanted to shout out. The first being for Season 4 of Acapulco, which returns next Wednesday. We'll be highlighting that and talking about it more on next week's episode. Chief of War is coming August 1st, and the full trailer is now available. We'll link that in the show notes. And we got just the tiniest teaser segment for the next season of The Morning Show coming September 17th. So if you want your very first glimpse at what to expect there, we'll link that in the show notes as well.
Oh yes, cannot wait for The Morning Show to return. Apparently the headline this year is The Truth. And of course, that truth comes by way of Marianne Cotillard, who I cannot wait to see make her series debut. In terms of Apple original news now, we've got some renewal news first, with of course the hit Apple original British spy series Slow Horses, officially renewed for a 7th season on Apple TV Plus ahead of its Season 5 debut this September. It's based on Mick Herron's novel Bad Actors, and the season will see Lamb and his slow horses on the hunt to find and neutralise a mole at the heart of British government before they can bring down the state. In terms of release news, Invasion will return for its 3rd season on August 22nd on Apple TV Plus, and Apple has released a quick teaser video for the new season, which we'll link in the show notes. Amazon Prime members can stream the entire 1st season of The Buccaneers for free in the Prime Video app during the month of July. And according to The Hollywood Reporter, Apple is currently considering releasing the 3rd season of Tehran in the coming months after delaying its release due to the war in Gaza. The report also states that filmmaking for the 4th season of Tehran is slated for this fall.
In production news, Neuromancer has entered production as revealed by an official announcement video from Apple. Though based on previous reporting, production was set to have begun some time ago, but of course Apple likes to let people know in their own way, and these beautiful shots of the sets are a great way to do it. And Ted Lasso is currently in the midst of filming in a small football ground in Surrey. But the question remains, who are Guernsfield FC? We'll find out in a year's time during World Cup 2026. In development, Apple has landed a series adaptation of Alyssa Sussman's novel Funny You Should Ask from Tomorrow Studios and writer Rachel Alter. Emily Brown and Roger Jean Page from Bridgerton and Black Bag will executive produce the series, with Page also set to play the lead role. The book itself is a love story that follows a restless young journalist with big dreams who interviews a Hollywood heartthrob and then reunites with him 10 years later to discover exactly how he feels about her. We've got some casting news that has me very excited, Sigmund. Someone that I'm a big fan of, Chrissy Metz from This Is Us, will join previously announced stars Liev Schreiber, Zazie Beetz, Stephen Graham, Bill Camp, and Rory Culkin in the Apple original series adaptation of Lars Kepler's crime novels following homicide detective Jonah Lynn.
And what a cast that is turning out to be. In other news, Spike Lee's Highest to Lowest is set to close the opening night of the 23rd Martha's Vineyard African American Film Festival in New York on August 1st. The film, an original take on an Akira Kurosawa classic, follows a music mogul who's forced to fight for his family and legacy when he becomes a victim of a ransom plot. The fifth and reportedly a final collaboration between Spike Lee and Denzel Washington also stars Jeffrey Wright, Ifeanyish Hedera, and A$AP Rocky. Both Lee and Hedera will discuss the themes of the movie following its debut presentation. And in the lead up to the film's release, also in New York City, is Kurosawa in 4K, a 2-week series of classics by the great Japanese director Akira Kurosawa, gloriously restored in spectacular 4K, with the festival running at Film Forum in New York City from Friday, July 18th through Thursday, July 31st. The 9-film festival features some of the most influential titles by the legendary director and in all of world cinema, spanning genres from samurai epic to gritty noir, with restorations undertaken by Toho Co. Limited, which I'm hoping will someday make their way to the TV app, Devon. But something that looks to be speeding its way to the TV app and to Apple TV is something that, well, it was on the cards. At least Sunny Hayes' cards.
Yes, Sigmund, multiple outlets have reported that Apple is now the frontrunner to secure the U.S. rights to Formula One with an offer of $150 million per year for the rights following the theatrical success of F1 the movie. Disney-owned ESPN currently holds the U.S. rights and has also been in negotiations, but the company has reportedly declined to match Apple's offer. U.S. F1 rights are currently valued at $85 million per year, though that number was expected to rise given the more than doubling of the sport's audience over the past 2 seasons. So F1 is a sport that many people in the Apple community love, and I think it's probably getting a lot more attention even now with the success of F1 the movie. Especially over here in the U.S. where the sport isn't quite as popular. Of course, we've got our NASCAR segment that people tend to love and gravitate towards. But I think F1 is on the rise, and with ESPN seemingly being willing to give up these rights if the cost does go up, Apple very well could be broadcasting F1 very soon, which I think would be a cool collaboration.
It would be a cool collaboration, and it would be, I think it's fair to say, the first global sport that Apple picked up, because MOS, Season Pass, and MLB, Friday Night Baseball, very much, US centric. And this is a traveling roadshow, as we very well know now after watching F1 the movie. Awards news now. A big week for Apple, especially this week with the Primetime Emmy Award nominations, including the likes of Severance, The Studio, Shrinking, Slow Horses, Bad Sisters, Dope Thief, Presumed Innocent, Disclaimer, Pachinko, Dark Matter, Your Friends and Neighbours, The Gorge, Death, President Now, and Bono's Stories of Surrender. Too many for us to list, but some interesting stats amongst all of these nominations.
Yes, 27 for Severance. It led the pack in terms of series, the most nominations for a single series, which is incredible. The Studio got 23 nominations, beating Ted Lasso's record for a first-year comedy. That's really incredible. Funny enough, this is Harrison Ford's first time to be nominated for the Emmys for Shrinking, which is great to see. And it really is just incredible looking at this list, how broad Apple's slate is in terms of Emmy nominations. I have to shout out Deaf President Now for Best Documentary. Obviously rooting for that one there. But it's cool to see some other ones. Disclaimer, Presumed Innocent, Dark Matter. I mean, all of these, it's really great to see. So congratulations to all the nominees and best of luck. The winners are going to be announced September 14th on CBS and Paramount+.
Then we've got the Daytime Emmy Award nominations, with 6 for The Secret Lives of Animals, including Outstanding Science and Nature Program, Directing Team for a Single Camera Daytime Non-Fiction Program, Music Direction and Composition, Cinematography, Single Camera Editing, and Sound Mixing and Sound Editing, with winners announced October 17th, followed by the Television Critics Association Award nominations, 14 of them, 5 for Severance, 4 for The Studio, 2 for Shrinking, and then 1 each for Disclaimer, Wondler, and Wonder Pets in the City, with winners announced later this summer.
Yeah, really awesome week for Apple FYC, and congratulations all around. And of course, we'll be keeping an eye out for any more nominations and for all of these award ceremonies as they do come around. But for now, Sigmund, let's get into this week's Apple TV releases, because there's a lot to catch up on, even just since we last spoke. A new game was added to Game Room for Apple Vision Pro, that's Mahjong. So if you want to jump in Apple Vision Pro and play a spatial version of Mahjong with your friends, you can now do so. We also recently saw the premiere of The Wild Ones, the nature docuseries on Apple TV+. Today sees the debut of Apple Music Live, Central C, live from London, a new episode of The Buccaneers, and the penultimate episode of Stick. On Thursday, for the gamers out there, Cyberpunk 2077 Ultimate Edition from CD Projekt Red comes to the Mac App Store. This was promised to be coming to the Mac, and now here it is. Very cool to see. On Friday, we've got new episodes of Foundation and Smoke, and the kids and family premiere of Snoopy Presents a Summer Musical. Very excited to go off to summer camp and hear some songs from Charlie Brown and the Game. And no Friday Night Baseball this week. They'll be taking the weekend off, but they'll be back next week.
But taking the place of MLB this week is MOS, because they're everywhere. Today and Saturday, MOS Game Days on MOS Season Pass. Tuesday, the MOS Skills Challenge. And next Wednesday, we get the MOS All-Star Game. So very, very cool. Lots happening on MOS Season Pass, and some of which will be available for free in the TV app for everyone. Extras this week, Owen Wilson, really, really engaging interview with Zane Lowe. Zane Lowe gets all of the good interviews. I'm slightly jealous, but he's very good at them. Long Way Home, the Apple TV Plus original series soundtrack, is now available from Charlie Jefferson on Apple Music. Then we've got The Buccaneers, Josie Tota on set. Foundation, The Chaos of the Mule, and the top 5 best moments in season 1 and 2, alongside an AMA with Dennis Lehane, the creator of Smoke and Blackbird. But last week, we saw the finale of a different show altogether, Murderbot, and we're about to begin our recap, which will be somewhat spoilery. So if you've not yet finished Murderbot, please skip this chapter, and we'll see you on the other side for TV app highlights and our up next picks. In a high-tech future, a rogue security robot secretly gains free will, but to stay hidden, it reluctantly joins a new mission protecting scientists on a dangerous planet, even though it just wants to binge soap operas.
I was built to protect and obey humans, but now that I've hacked my programming, I can do whatever I want, as long as they don't find out.
Do you think we can trust it?
Stay calm. Oh, eye contact.
It seems like it's going through something.
Stop staring at me.
I wasn't. Stop staring at me.
Written, directed and produced by Chris and Paul Weitz, based on the novel by Martha Wells, and starring and executive produced by Alexander Skarsgård, with an ensemble cast including Noma Dumezweni, David Dastmalchian, Sabrina Wu, Akshay Khanna, and Tatiana Jones and Tamara Podemsky. This is a show that, honestly, we'd been waiting so long to find out about, see how it was going to work tonally in comparison to the books. We'll get into that all in a little bit. But the overall plot was quite vast, and for a Murderbot, very human.
Yes, Murderbot's very human indeed, Sigmund, as we see throughout the plot of the first season. Let's recap it real quick. Murderbot, a humanoid security robot that has hacked its own code to give itself free will so it can binge hours of soap operas, is assigned by the Corporation Rim to protect a team of researchers from the Preservation Alliance when they go on a mission to a distant planet. The team, led by Dr. Mensa, treat Murderbot as an equal based on their opposition to AI enslavement, though the team's tech expert, the enhanced Dr. Garathan, shares his doubts about the SEC unit. After the team is attacked by an alien creature, they realize that their corporation-provided maps are incomplete, and their investigation into the matter leads them to uncover a conspiracy. A rogue group called Grey Chris has paid off the corporation to work off the books, attacking other research groups and stealing their data for the sake of profit. Having grown fond of his team, Murderbot hatches a plan to save them from Grey Chris and get them safely off the planet, ultimately giving his life to save Dr. Mensa from an explosion meant to take out Grey Chris. And then back at the Corporation Rim, the Preservation Alliance team threatened to sue the corporation if they don't free Murderbot. Once set free, Murderbot leaves the team under the guise of checking the perimeter, setting off to find its own place in the galaxy. And that's the first season of Murderbot.
And it is a quick season, right? Every episode, I think around the 20-minute, 30-minute mark. A real easy watch. I think it delves into a lot. You know, if I was to compare it to the books that this is based on, you know, there are some certain elements that they expand upon and some elements that are kind of either ignored or some characters whose characteristics are drawn into other characters on screen here. So, you know, kind of comparing it to the books, the hacking of Governor Module is a slow reveal in the books compared to the series, which happens within the first 5 minutes and we're off and away. Then there's a deeper backstory around the personal struggles of Garathan, who's both an agent but also a survivor of drug addiction. We've got Mensa, who's got panic attacks and has leadership difficulties. And some characters from the books, like Overse and Volescu, are removed, or their traits are folded into other characters in the show. Then there's the polyamorous relationship between Arada, Pin Lee, and Rati, which is not as prominent in the books, but adds for more of a soap-like dynamic to the non-soap in this show. And there's a lot more in terms of expansion and importance of, you know, the rise of Sanctuary Moon compared to the books, which only really briefly mention the show in passing. But I think tonally it translated well. At least that's what I'm told by other readers. So maybe I was reading the books wrong. I don't know. But what did you think about the tone overall?
This show was much, much funnier than I expected it to be based on the premise and what little I've heard about the books. And even the trailer, it had a little bit of that humor, but watching the show, it just struck me as that sort of a totally different world of sci-fi from Foundation, right? It's a little bit more campy, I think. And it's just got more of a romp feel to it. Almost not quite to the level of like Monty Python, but just a little bit of some of those gags from a group of people who, while they're characters that we enjoy and relate to, they also just have these really quirky characteristics that come out and are so opposite of Murderbot and its approach to the world that it just makes for some really funny dynamics. And hearing you describe the differences between the book and the series, it sounds to me like the series leans way more into the comedic elements than the books do. Because the rise of the Sanctuary Moon, every time Clark Gregg came on screen during this season, I was cracking up. I think those scenes were filmed exclusively to make the audience laugh and maybe lighten some of the tension of, you know, the violence that does take place on the show. But even just the team and their habitats, the strange relationship between some of the members as they go under contract for an open relationship for a certain period of time. To me, that all just struck me as there for humor and making it a little bit more lighthearted in the midst of, you know, some of the darker elements that are there. This gave me a lot of vibes, and I think we made this comparison during the highlight of Avenue 5, where it's just, while it's not that the plot doesn't matter. It's just that there's not a super seriousness to the tone. You know, it's not trying to establish this very strict world that is so inhabited and all these different elements have to come together to make the story work. The Corporation Rim, you immediately know who they are. They're the corporate overlords. They're the jerks who make everybody get insurance, right? And then take advantage of them financially. And it's like a parody almost. I guess maybe it's like right up to that line, to that point. And then even Preservation Alliance, they're the hippies, right? They believe that AI are enslaved and need to be freed, and brings up some interesting themes and questions. But then sometimes they take it even too far to the point that it's a joke. That game that they play, We Can Talk About This, that cracked me up so much as, a way of, I guess, conflict resolution. But it's just kind of, around the campfire, holding hands, singing Kumbaya. And I think as much as Murderbot is this very serious being who takes its job seriously, while it may hate humans, it still believes in protecting them and doing the right thing. Even Murderbot's tone and aversion to eye contact, things like that, it makes for some very funny moments as well. So yeah, to me, overall, I think the series leaned into that, and I think that was to its strength in terms of giving us something that's science fiction but also approachable in a way that a lot of science fiction isn't, and something that I think has potential to have an audience outside of the traditional people who might be reading Martha Wells novels.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. I got to say, the Avenue 5, I think we were spot on with that when we had the initial discussion. Unfortunately for me, it kind of threw me off the series a little bit. Of course, I finished the series, but I wasn't desperate for it, even though I knew there was only 25 to 28, 30-minute episode to watch. I wasn't jumping at the bit to rejoin the story, whereas I was with the books. And so that might be something, often I don't read the books of an adaptation, and I see book readers telling me, oh no, the book was so much better, and I am not that person because I'm the film guy, right? Rather than the book reader or listener. And I feel like the roles were completely reversed with this one. That's my general takeaway from this. Do you have any takeaway thoughts from the first season of Murderbot?
Yeah, I mean, other than the laughs, I'll say towards the end, it does have an emotional arc and comes back around, and it is touching to see the relationship between Murderbot and the team and the way they do grow together. And I try not to think about this too much when I watch shows like Murderbot and Black Mirror, because it seems like a lot of these series take us to the point that once AI becomes sentient, then creating it itself is almost like a wicked thing because you're containing it and enslaving it in a way. And there's definitely some commentary there, but we're not to sentience yet. And so again, I try not to think about it too much because it's just a whole ethical thing that, first of all, I had no control over, but also scares me a lot. Ultimately, I think for me, this was just a fun sci-fi adventure, doled out in short novella-sized bits that I enjoyed. I really liked the format. I liked dipping into this world and then dipping back out, after 20 or 30 minutes. I love the format, and I'm excited to find out that it's going to continue, and we'll see more of Martha Wells' stories with Murderbot continue on because the show is going to get a second season.
Yes, a second season I'm very much looking forward to. But, as I've probably put across, this wasn't a show that really hit it with me. But I did check out the Murderbot subreddit to see what other people's views were, and this was a little post put up by W Wants over on that subreddit that I wanted to share because, hey, if it didn't jive with me, it definitely jived with someone. I'm only 4 minutes and 25 seconds into the latest episode, and it's already got me breaking down in ways I usually never allow. I can't express how much this story has already meant to me since I first watched the first trailer months ago and then started reading the books before the show even came out. I've always lived a life of needing to outperform every possible expectation to feel like I have a chance of being accepted and being loved, and this show has triggered every one of those fears and insecurities, yet somehow packaged in a possibility of hope that we can find good humans to fight for us one day, if we keep just being good enough. I think what wrecked me most was that I've spent much of my life feeling like Murderbot, hardened by experience, self-reliant to a fault, convinced that no one will come for me, that if I'm ever in trouble, I'll have to save myself because no one else will. And yet, in this story, someone shows up. People care. They fight for Murderbot. Not because it's useful or because it's perfect, but because it matters to them. Watching that made me cry in a way I haven't in a long time, because deep down, no matter how many times life has taught me otherwise, some part of me still aches to be fought for. Still hopes that one day someone will show up, not to fix me, but to stand beside me. Murderbot's story has meant more to me than I realised. It's more than a sci-fi adventure. It's a story about autonomy, yes, but also about trauma, trust, and the terrifying possibility of being loved anyway.
Well, thank you for reading that, and I love that this shows to me, and maybe people listening to me go on and on about Stick had that same feeling. Even if a series doesn't have that emotional connection for you, it can speak to people, and it's so beautiful. I mean, yeah, that message that everyone deserves to be loved, and even if you feel like you're on the outside looking in, there are people who will show up for you. I think that's such a beautiful message that Murderbot leaves us with. I'm so thankful that user shared that, and it meant so much to them. Season 1 of Murderbot is now streaming on Apple TV Plus, with a second season already in the works. Now, Sigmund, of course, before we wrap up the episode, we've got to know, what TV app highlights do you have for us?
Well, there's going to be someone out there that has already watched everything that we discussed earlier in the show. So I needed to make sure that there was a few things ready to go this week in our TV app highlights. And they are The Phoenician Scheme, Wes Anderson's latest movie, Jaws at 50, a documentary about Steven Spielberg's seminal classic. Also available as an extra if you purchase Jaws, so it's in iTunes Extras as well as Disney Plus. Then we've got Nobu, which is an examination of culinary legend Nobuyuki Matsushita. Then we've got the live action remake of How to Train Your Dragon, now available on PVOD. And later this week on HBO Max, Billy Joel, And So It Goes, an expansive portrait of the life and music of Billy Joel, exploring the love, loss, and personal struggles that fuel his songwriting. And only this week, I was listening to an interview with RZA from Wu-Tang Clan, who was talking about Billy Joel's classic song, She's Always a Woman to Me. And so this documentary has come at the perfect time for me. And that's not where the music ends this week, because it's time for our Up Next picks. I think we've both got a little bit of music in our lives and then a little something extra.
Yeah, for sure. Mine's music related. It's also a bit of a throwback for me to a band that I have been in love with since high school, followed throughout their career. Last week on Amazon Prime Video, there was a new documentary release called Simple Plan, Kids in the Crowd. It's a film from Didier Charest following the rise of the punk rock band from their humble beginnings in 1999 Montreal to today, featuring interviews with the band and other voices from their history, including Mark Hoppus and Avril Lavigne. I don't know about you, Sigmund, but ever since I'm just a kid, I've loved Simple Plan and loved following their career. They've stuck with their music for so long. I have so much respect for that, and this far into their career, they can't help but have such a storied history that it definitely deserves a documentary. Based on the trailer, it looks like this does a really good job of documenting their story, going behind the scenes and pulling into all the archival footage of when they were just kids getting started, and now how far they've come and where they are today. So yeah, a band I love, and really happy to see them get the documentary treatment. It's Simple Plan, Kids in the Crowd on Amazon Prime Video.
Very, very cool. Something I want to dig out actually at some point, but not until I've got at least another 30 plays of clips, Let God Sort Them Out, Clips is a duo that hasn't brought out an album in 16 years, and as a self-professed Clipster, this is an album that I cannot wait to listen to again, and I think I'm getting like 5 listens a day in right now. Two brothers, No Malice and Pusha T, getting back together after 16 years. No Malice went away to reconnect with his Christianity, and now he's back. And the first track, which is called The Birds Don't Sing, featuring John Legend, is the two brothers discussing the loss of their parents 4 months apart, and it's a tearjerker for sure. And then we just get into everything that really Clips are known for. It is caviar rap, full of bravado, full of pronunciation that is just so tight. And this is an album that's only like 40 minutes long, so there isn't a moment that's wasted. Tyler, the creators on this, Kendrick Lamar, produced entirely by Pharrell Williams and recorded at the Louis Vuitton headquarters in Paris. Just incredible. Nas is on this as well, so highly recommend checking it out. But for those wanting a movie, Sovereign is my up next pick. Inspired by true events, it's a tense and provocative true crime thriller about a father and his teenage son, Jerry and Joseph Kane, who are played by Nick Offerman and Jacob Tremblay, who follow the sovereign citizen belief system, a deeply anti-establishment worldview rooted in distrust of government authority. And as the pair travel across the country delivering self-taught legal seminars and pushing back against systems they believe have failed them, their journey brings them into conflict with police chief Jim Beauchart, played by Dennis Quaid, setting off a tragic chain of events that forces a reckoning with power, principle, and the limits of freedom. And this is one that would have gone under so many people's radars last week, but is available right now in the TV app, available on PVOD, and you've got a lot of listening to do and a lot of watching to do, everyone.
Yeah, best of luck to everybody. Check out the show notes for links to everything we talked about. Let us know when you finish the checklist, because we've given you all a lot of homework this week. But of course, we thank you all so much for listening, and we always appreciate your feedback. So if you want to send us your top 5 lists for the first half of 2025 for films or TV shows, anything that we missed, anything that you're looking forward to the rest of the year, you can contact us on social media via the links in the show notes, or you can reach out to us via our contact form, which we'll also link in the show notes.
We'll be back next week to start our final trip to Acapulco and talk games. So until then, stay safe, watch some Apple TV, play some Apple Arcade, and have a great week.